Okay, welcome back to another edition of Live Wire. On the program today is Jason Salsman. He is the director of MCN Communications. Is that the right title?
Press secretary.
We're having him on.
Yeah.
It's both? Okay.
It's both. Yeah.
But yeah. So, director of communications and press secretary Jason Salsman. We're having him on the program today as part of the Muscogee Pod historical season that started, and if you don't know, shoot, what's going on?
Doesn't like me.
What happened? It says it's fine. Well, just a second, guys. Let me figure out what's going on here. Let's do this.
Not right now, maybe, but I'm as cool as a cucumber because you and I have been here before. So.
Really, this is the first time I've ever had a problem.
I'm sorry.
On this. No, it doesn't have anything to do with you.
Weather.
I have no idea what's going on.
It could be the.
I have no idea what's going on. Are you guys? Is anybody seeing us right now? YouTube is saying that it's not getting any video. Are you guys? Could somebody pop in the chat if you can see us? See, the preview thing says that it's good.
Yeah.
What is going on? I don't know if anybody's seeing this. Hold on. I hate it when this happens. Okay, they say they can see and hear us. So sorry about that. I don't know what's going on with the YouTube thing. It's saying you guys can't see us. But if you can see us, we're just going to steamroll ahead.
All good.
If there is a problem with this stream, and for some reason it crashes or whatever, guys, just remember I'll upload a full, perfect version after the fact because we're also recording it. But that having been said, so if you guys out there haven't ever heard of it or seen it, there's a link in the description to this stream to the Mvskoke Pod. It's a podcast that Jason has been doing over at the executive branch. The first season was mostly, what would you say, like celebrity profiles or interviews with celebrities. You guys had Sterling Harjo, you had Yadika Starfields, you had, forgive me, you guys also had the spirit guide from the program. What was that?
Oh, yeah, Dallas Go-To. Yeah.
So you guys have had some interesting talent on there.
Yeah.
And then your second season now is you're doing a
Storyteller series.
Yes, and the first 3-part episode is about the 1979 Constitution.
Yeah.
So I guess my first question for you would be, how did the pod come about? You know, what was the idea for that?
Well, we were just kind of discussing one day how we could do something that would be both informational and entertaining. You know, fun and kind of invigorate people to want to get the information that you want out there and the conversations that you want out there, but doing it in a way where it's not packaged as sort of, here's some dry, flyer information, whatever. And so we said, hey, let's just start having conversations from our reservation. And I had, of course, experience hosting and interviewing people from my days at Native News Today and the television program. And, it was a natural fit. I always wanted to do a podcast. There's a podcast craze. A lot of people now, that's the way they gather their information. That's the way that they gather their content. And whether you're mowing the grass or, writing a paper or whatever, people have their earphones in and they're usually listening to a podcast. And so I thought, let's take that and let's take, a need for us to communicate, but also just a basic need for the same things we started the TV show for, getting Native people and Native subject matter out there conversationally into a pop culture world, if you will, and where
Right.
people are, like I said, conversations from our reservation. The reason for that was, hey, you and I, all of us, for so many years around here, we've had conversations with people, and I bet you would agree with me. There's so many times where we're like, man, whether we were, on a park bench or out at an event and nothing's being recorded, we're like, man, I wish we could have recorded that conversation.
Yeah.
That was really cool. And a lot of people probably would have been a party to that.
Yeah.
Had
And
they
there's
known.
information that I got that's
Yeah.
probably nobody else has,
Well,
or
yeah.
very few people. And everybody, all citizens need to know it. Right.
Yeah, and the perspectives from some of those people. Like I said, there's probably a lot of native people out there, not even in the state of Oklahoma, but in this country that know who Sterling Harjo is, but they've never sat down and talked to him.
Right.
They could tell you, they could see his picture and be like, that's Sterling Harjo.
Mm-hmm.
He's the But then you go, well, what's he really like when you just sit down and talk with him about things? And we
Right,
talked about,
right.
Him growing up in Holdenville and some of his earlier movies and the reason he does what he does. And,
Mm-hmm.
and you know what I mean? Like the things that you could only really get from having a conversation with the
Right.
man. And same thing with Dallas Goldtooth. A lot of people go, oh, that's the spirit guy on the horse that says, oh, but he's also like a really hardcore environmentalist and has been in that fight for many years and with a national reputation and a national organization. So, you find out, peel back a lot of layers on these people.
Right.
And I think that was the motivation to begin with. And so we just started setting up guests. And like I said, we had a Major League Baseball player. We had an NBA basketball player, Dallas Goldtooth, Sterling Harjo. We had some really good guests. We also sprinkled in some people that we wanted the folks around here to know about, our chiefs, our speaker of our national council, some of the people, our tribal liaison,
Right.
what's her background? Why does she want to work and connect with citizens outside the reservation?
The AG.
Yeah, the AG. And you're going, my God, our AG is a woman that was a former Marine that, has this really, upbringing that sort of carved her into the kind of person she is now. And then she shares perspectives and stories that make you go, man, I'm glad she's in that position. I'm glad she has that kind of heart to be like, maybe we do things, maybe we do justice a little bit differently at the Muscogee Creek Nation. Maybe it's not, crumple up, throw in the wastebasket, close the book, we're done. Maybe it's more of a restorative and a rehabilitation type of crime and punishment scenario.
Yeah.
And we've been saying that with McGirt too. Like that's why we fight so hard for McGirt. We see your system of things and how it doesn't work. We in Oklahoma incarcerate more women than anyone in the world. We see how it doesn't work. That's not the model we want to follow. We want to carve our own path. So people go, oh, why do you fight for McGirt? Those are some of the small things that people don't talk about. And when we have somebody on like A.G. Wisner that says, hey, this is where I come from, this is what's shaped my mentality, there might be people out there listening to that interview that go, man, I'm super glad she's our AG. Or at the least, man, I'm glad I know a little bit more about what our AG is all about.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing for any information because, in the past there's been not a lot of information to get out on that front. But and I want to remind the audience too, if you guys have a question about the Mvskoke Pod, pop it into the chat. And or if you have suggestions for a future podcast that Jason might look into, pop them in there. T.Y. Pearl did post some questions in there, and we might go through those later if Jason wants to touch on them. But we're not doing this isn't really like a press conference thing. We're just talking about the podcast.
And I'm glad you said that about people suggesting who they wanted to hear, because that's really for me, I want to make it good, of course, but at the same time, I want to make it popular. I want the people to be waiting for who's the next guest. You know what I mean? And I know we've got some of those podheads out there that are like, oh man, they holler at us and they're like, we can't wait till you upload your next episode.
Right.
We know they're with us. You know what I mean?
In fact, we got Dr. Kirsten C. Kunkel was making her comment here saying, very cool live wire to talk about the Muscogee Pod. Always enjoy listening to Spotify, Jason.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, and that's,
And while, since she's in the chat too, I can get you the contact information, because she would be a great person to
She'd
do
be a
the
great
pod
one,
with.
yeah.
She is a opera soprano, and
Wow.
also has written musical pieces and operas. She has written musical pieces about, based on Alexander Posey poetry, and she's a descendant from him. So
be perfect.
Yeah, for sure. I'll get you that contact.
That's
info,
a story to tell right there. And I saw where Jonadev Chowdhury was mentioned on the chat too about being a guest, and see, and that's another thing. People they hear we have an ambassador. What's he really do? Like what's going on in D.C. Like why was that position created? I was like, these are perfect things to talk about, because, like I said,
and you guys interviewed John
absolutely
Dev.
did.
So TY Prol, if you didn't know that,
and please, if you're just now like acclimating yourself to the podcast, this is a great time, guys, because our first season we had 17 episodes. There is a ton of content already there. If you haven't explored,
binge watch
so many different
or binge
stuff.
Listen to it.
Binge listen. And I don't know if you got a chance to listen to the Jonadev podcast. But
I haven't done, this is just my disclaimer, I haven't done any of the celebrity stuff. Like when I saw that you guys announced the 1979 thing and the people that were going to be, well, that's my jam. I was like, I want to hear what these guys have to say in particular about this.
Absolutely.
And you guys really got into the weeds, which is also what I like.
Yeah, sure.
So like Sterling Harjo, I know that's what most people, like the celebrity stuff is good.
Yeah.
But it's just not my thing.
Well, yeah, and what I was going to say is that in that episode we also included Jonadev's wife, who is like herself maybe more known in Indian country than Jonadev.
Right.
Mary Catherine Nagel is a famous playwright, has had plays done and performed all over the world, but also is like a really, I don't know if we can say BA, but a BA lawyer.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Awesome. In the legal field, and an incredible, staunch, warrior for sovereignty and women. And she works with NIWRC, the National Indian Women's Resource Center. So all these eclectic people sort of came together to make that first series. But I'll tell you what, the way we'll segue into season 2 is I felt like this is cool, right? Like, let's knock this out and let's keep this going, because we had that formula where it was very guest-driven.
Right.
Who's this person? I want to know. I started feeling like whenever we took our break and said, let's make a season 2, because we were at that point where I was just like, we got 17 episodes. Let's take a break for a minute. Let's repurpose, if you will, and let's look at what season 2 would be. Yes. And so when I started thinking about season 2, I was like, let's make the subject matter the celebrity. Right. Like the stuff we've always heard about, Jared, that nobody's ever really talked about. So I started thinking, I was just like, the 79 Constitution. Extremely polarizing, no matter who you ask.
Yeah.
There's controversy around it. There's chatter around it. And I said to myself, let's talk to people that were there, that were involved in the framing of it. And I just so happened to be incredibly lucky to get in the gentleman that basically framed the Constitution. I mean, literally, Ed Mouse was a graduate student at OU studying policy. And, Claude Cox, the chief at the time, has in his hands the responsibility of creating a modern government for the tribe out of nothing. And he goes, hey, who's this young grad student studying in policy? Let's see him. And he cares about the nation.
Right.
He knows its people. He has a vested interest in doing this. And it was Ed Mouse. And at that time, he wouldn't be a principal chief yet. But Bill Fife was like, if we had it at the time, see, this will tell you how,
it's a great program.
Not even, this will tell you, you've got to listen to this. But this will tell you, like, for the people that are like our age, maybe a little bit younger, in their early 30s, it may be hard to conceive that there wasn't all of this in this government at the time.
Right.
But for people like Ed and Principal Chief Fife, those guys remember when it was absolutely nothing. And so at that time, Bill Fife, who would later go on to become principal chief, of course. But at that time, he was just like the manager of what would become the education and training division that we know now.
Right.
But it had to sprout up from nothing.
Yeah.
And that's what
and
Ed
no
was
spoilers
saying.
to the audience, but and I also want to say,
yeah.
Well, I want to compliment you guys. The production on it is impeccable. This music stuff is great. All of the editing.
Did you like
is
the
awesome.
Smashing Pumpkins?
Yeah. It's nice. It's nice. And the other thing too is it's a really good series of interviews. From our standard, one of the things we used to talk about it with any story is, can you get the eye juice? Can you get the emotional impact on the person? Yeah. That's in this story. You wouldn't think that you're doing an interview about policy decisions and that's how the government's going to be structured would have an emotional component for people, but it does. It does when you're in it and you're like fighting for different standpoints and things within the Constitution. So
I'll give a really small spoiler if you don't mind.
Oh no, go
really
for it. It's your pod.
There was one moment in the episode that really, and you can, if you listen, you can tell it broke me up. I was laughing at the top of my lungs, but I really am crafting this question. You know how I can get in the weeds when I'm doing a question.
Right.
I'm really crafting this question, and I'm setting it up, and I'm layering it. I'm getting him ready to answer the way that I can't wait till he answers this. And I'm talking about how meaningful it must have been, and how excited he was, and how fired up, to do this and have this responsibility. And I lay it out there and I say it, and Mr. Mouse goes, "Well, I wasn't." And I just died laughing because I
know
wasn't.
The exact part you're talking about, because I listened to it and then I told somebody else about it. I was like, this is the most Muscogee situation where Jason's like, you must have been so excited to come in and work on this government or whatever. And
it was a pain.
Mr. Mouse is like, no, not really.
It really sucked.
Like they told me I had to come down there and do it. I was the only one that could do it. And I was like, that is a Indian dude answer 100%.
Well, but when we continue to talk about it, you understand sort of what he means by what he's saying, because and we get into it in episodes 2 and 3, really into the meat of it. But nobody really realizes that he wasn't a popular man because of that 79 Constitution.
Right. There were legal battles over
There were people that wanted things to remain the way that they were. And we even see that now. And that's what we talk about in the podcast, about as much as things change, these squabbles about how do we really do things here at this Muscogee Nation. If you poll 10 citizens, you may get 10 different answers on 10 different topics.
Yeah,
and
for
so
sure.
That makes it hard for leadership. It makes it a tough job. When they say being chief or being a council member or being an executive director that's tasked with these kind of things, it's not, they're not saying it's a tough job for you to feel sorry for them or to let them off the hook when things don't go good when you don't agree with things or whatever. It's a tough job because you're having to satisfy so many different voices and opinions.
Right.
And it's impossible to do, right? No matter what you do. So that's what makes it a tough job. And so I could feel that coming through Ed. He was like, man, and then that's when we kind of segued into the cool stuff about, we had people chasing guys around tables and getting into literal physical, disagreements about this. But what I thought was interesting was, you start to kind of chip away at what was the problem and everything like that. And I said it just a moment ago. You had a certain set of folks that said there ain't nothing wrong with the Constitution.
1866 Constitution.
Yeah, the 1866.
Yes.
There ain't nothing wrong with it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it or whatever. But you had, now remember, this is 1979. You had women starting to elevate themselves into positions of influence at the nation and be a part of those things. And they were certainly a part of that group, the Indian Action Team. That'll be on the test, folks.
Well, without them, the whole thing would have fallen apart.
And they're on this. very important part of Creek history, right? They're crafting what we are to become and be. And these women are looking around going, when people are saying, well, we just need it the way it was and blah, blah, blah. These women are sitting around going, hey, we couldn't even vote whenever you're, according to this current constitution, we can't even vote. So, yeah, and that's what Ed was explaining. He was like, listen, I certainly had my feelings about don't change things whenever, certain things culturally and traditionally and whatever. And and there was certainly that pull when they were putting these things together going, are we selling our souls to the white man? Are we mimicking a form of government when we have our own, traditional? I get it.
Well, even today, there are different groups in the old timers. I say old timers really, but the elders that still are arguing for the 1866 Constitution, the bicameral legislature, and they're like, we should still do it that way. So, but it is good, and you guys should check it out. Not to spoil everything that's in it, but it is really interesting to hear it out of the horse's mouth. We had a comment in here. T.Y. Proles saying Robert Trepp would have been a good person to have.
We would love to have Robert Trepp on.
And I would say to T.Y. Prole, if you haven't checked it out, there is a very interesting interview with Robert Trepp in our From the Vault series.
Yeah, there is.
We have A More Perfect Union, and it's Robert Trepp talking about the process at the time of the process. So you could go check that out. We can't, God rest his soul.
God rest his
Trepp
soul,
could not be on any program.
When he was still with us, I'm glad he brought his name up, because when we were throwing kind of guests around for this episode, I remember thinking, man, I wish Bob Trepp was still alive.
Yeah.
And some of those people, like in that era, but then we sort of kind of whittled away and kind of landed on Ed, which was perfect. Ed had just become a living legend. And a part of it too, Jared, was like making sure that so now this story, Ed telling this story firsthand point of view is locked and loaded. We got it forever.
Oh yeah, that's
people 100 years from now can listen to him.
Yeah, that's the thing that's important about these interviews too, is getting that stuff on the record.
Yes.
It's not so much about the person is right or wrong in what they're saying, but that there wasn't a lot of perspectives being recorded at the time period that happened, because people were so busy making it happen.
Yeah, building
they
it.
weren't like recording the history of it, so it's good to get it on record.
Well, and the fact that we were bringing up talking about Robert, I love it, but Robert guided the fact that he's no longer here guided my insistence, my persistence in getting these gentlemen sit down. Let's get this recorded. Let's do it now.
Yeah.
And put some urgency on it. And I think this is going to hold up well. And I just really, like I said, we got 3 parts out of it. And we're putting it together. And when I do a show, on most of the times I'm sort of regimented. When I'm looking over, I'm about 42 minutes. Let's not lose anybody. Let's start to wrap it up. These guys, it was open up the mic and let's just go until we're done. And so we got 3 parts out of it, which I'm very thankful for, because each part in this episode sort of breaks down different parts of the issue, right? So there was like the lead up and why do we need to do this? Then there was the actual process, the voting, the meetings, all of that, the politics, what have you. And then the third I thought was very important. The third part was to talk to them about what would you do what would you have done differently?
Yeah.
Do you look at this thing and go, man, we messed it up? Or do you look at it and go, well, it really held up well. I'm proud of this and everything like that. And the answer was fascinating.
Yeah,
it was a little bit of both.
That's what I was going to say. That part of the third episode there, where they're talking about, for instance, term limits and things, and the reversals of their own philosophies on things, was to me really interesting from a political standpoint, from what they were dealing with, and then going forward. And we could have a long conversation.
Well, we've talked about that before.
Yes,
term
absolutely.
limiting and
term limits is coming back as a topic.
Right.
Just generally, like like there's so many times in the podcast where you're like, what we're talking about now has come back as an issue now, right? So it's really interesting, and you wouldn't think it would be timely,
right? But
they are timely.
No, it is, because everything sort of repeats itself. That's the old cliche saying, right? But I mean, it does, and I think the more things change, the more they stay the same in certain instances. So it's all full circle. It really is.
For sure. Well, so we've talked about that. What's next on the pod?
So we've got a really exciting pod coming up for our next installment. It's going to be Tulsi time. It's going to be how a creek town turned into an oil town. And we're going to be talking with Russell Cobb. He's the associate professor of the arts at the University of Alberta. But he's a lifelong Tulsan, and he's got an incredible story to tell. I don't want to spoil again, but this guy is growing up in Tulsa. Some things are happening where his mom is having to be moved out of her house. He says, well, I want to see the abstract, and that's when things start getting good.
Right.
Okay? Yeah. And he falls into a rabbit hole of intertwined Creek and Tulsa history about what the land is that he grew up on and knew, and the surrounding areas, what it actually was, how it came to be, how it got taken, and how we are now in this second largest city in Oklahoma that very rarely has any sort of nod to its Muscogee roots.
Right.
And so when the very root of the city is Muscogee, a tree, ironically, the council oak tree. And so we touch on a little bit of everything. The Lutchaboga saying, this is our place, and this is where we're going to be, turn into Tallahassee, Old Town, and then to Tulsi Town, and now Tulsa. And we talk, Jared, in the pod about the little things that have sort of improved. We're seeing naming and, land acknowledgments. I know some people hear the land acknowledgments and roll their eyes. Oh, thanks for the land acknowledgement.
I'm doing it right now.
But, I saw you.
You guys can't see me.
No, but, it's better than nothing. And I think that when we see, signage and language in different places where we never would have seen it before, take, for instance, and we tell this story too, a lot of people would go shrug off the Tulsi on the Tulsa Drillers baseball team jersey.
Right.
Okay, and you go, what's that? Whatever. But I think about that person that's in the stadium that night and sees that and doesn't know what it is and asks somebody, and then somebody goes, oh, well, that's the Creek language because the Creeks founded Tulsa. And they walk away from there that night, even though it's a small, insignificant thing or whatever, but that person walks away there that night knowing something that they didn't know before, specifically about the intertwined roots of Tulsa and the Muscogee Creek people.
Right. Yeah.
And I think, look at that, and it's a small win. It's a win. And so...
Well, I think it also adds value for that person, even if they're not a Native American, because like anybody who's not a Native American that goes to an area that has a reservation or anything like that, those little snippets of information, about their culture or whatever is a story that person can tell to somebody else, and then they look like they're smart. Like, hey, did you know Tulsa's actually Tulsi now?
That's a train conversation.
You know what I mean? Like, and it just spreads out from there. So
well, and think about it. When you bring up a great point, because when we think reservations, a lot of people, they think reservations in Arizona or you know what I mean, or North Dakota, South Dakota.
Right.
What we have here is a very specific, very unique established reservation, because if you go over the entire country, there's not one reservation like ours but one, the Puyallup in Washington. Because they have Tacoma inside of their reservation. Yeah. One of the largest cities in Washington. We have Tulsa inside of our reservation, the second largest city in Oklahoma, a major metropolis. So those reservations don't have this, especially when it comes to crime and punishment and the justice system and everything, because when you think about the fact that we're cutting out a piece of Tulsa and saying, here, you're on our table now to take care of all that entails a reservation, then it's pretty high cotton. And it's a lot. It's a big responsibility. And so people's mindset, they don't really think, because of things like Tulsa, they don't think that's the res, but it is the res now.
Right. Well, and I think
established 2020.
Yeah. Well,
you could say established before that.
Well, I think too, that's something that's only going to help the city's reputation nationally, globally. Are there any shout outs you want to give to your production staff? Because, we haven't talked about Anthony and everything that's going on in that area.
Well, Anthony's actually leaving. This is his last week. Yeah, but Anthony Nieto has done a fantastic job with me on the board, and basically just kind of being my co-host, and he does a lot of research, man. It's funny because like we'll be doing, he gets so mad at me because he's like I spent 3 days typing up this paper with all this stuff, and he's like, you just rattle it off and I'm like, man, that just means I'm old and I've been here forever and I've covered this stuff forever, whatever. Yeah. But it's neat to see somebody with that like bright-eyed, that newborn baby that's like, uncovering a lot of these things.
Well, and that comes across in the pod too. Yeah. When he's sitting in, he's kind of like, "Hey, take me on a trip."
Yeah, exactly.
So
right, for sure.
You need that audience in the room guy.
Yeah, and he's been great. And before he left as well, Kyle Lee was on some of the basically creation of it with us, and it was sort of our idea together, the three of us, and we were like, this is going to be our little project, what I mean? And we did the pod cave, and we got all the equipment, and we were like, man, this is our a pet project here, and we're going to go full bore with it. But Kyle got a great opportunity, and so he's not here anymore, but I wanted to shout him out for sure. And then Ashton Taylor's been really helping us out, doing a good job, kind of stepping into that role of Anthony, sort of helping kind of like schedule and do the marketing of it and promote it and everything like that. So that's really helped me because me, I if I'm left to all of that stuff, I'm going to miss something. You know what I mean? Like making a post about it or whatever.
Well, it's really professional too. Like I'm not trying. It's not backhanded compliment, but I'm just saying like the graphics that are with it are great. The logo is great.
Thanks.
Like there's nothing that's lacking on it, and so kudos on that front.
Thank
too.
You.
T.Y. Pearl says there's going to be a job opening.
Is there going to be a job opening? Well, hey, man, like I said, I that position will come open, at the not communications, but Anthony was under marketing and tourism, so keep an eye out. The employment tab there on the nation's homepage, there's always jobs, and just find the one that's best for you. But if he's got some great credentials or whatever, come on, man. We always love to have the help.
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you want to go? Let's go.
Jared and I team up again. That
we're doing it right now.
Oh, we're doing it right now. This is fire content.
Well, this is what we always say is we're like, we need to do something when we're in the we're actually sitting there doing it. We'll be like, we need to do a show on this. Awesome. We're doing it right now. So do you want to go through, while we got some time here, you don't got to run out, right?
No, we're good, man.
I told you guys we weren't going to ask these questions, but I think Jason knows some of these answers.
Yeah, hit me up.
What's up with the fight for Ojibova?
Well, I just let you know that the administration stays, in regular meetings with the Ojibova group, not only the group from the grounds, but also their attorneys and the people that represent that fight. It's something that is continues every week, and they got a handle on it. And just any of the developments that we're able to share, we will. But I can say that the Ojibova group meets regularly with the administration, and it is a priority for sure.
Right. So Council Oak ceremony, any info?
Coming up, we just put out a save the date for that, November 5th, and excited to have that. And really just
is there going to be an itinerary? You got?
Yeah, that'll be out. Not
out yet.
Coming soon. Not out yet. No, we just put out a save the date here from our Cultural and Preservation Office, and that'll be November 5th there in Tulsa. So,
which reservation dogs characters will be the most popular Halloween costumes on the Muscogee Res this year?
I like that. I was saying earlier, probably Willie Jack. I think she seems to be the most popular, and I don't want to say easiest costume, but I want to say that all you have to do is kind of put in braids and throw on a backwards hat. And,
Right.
And
Well,
cuss a lot, you know.
Before we actually started, we actually had this exchange, but I'm going to repeat it verbatim.
Yeah.
TY Pro, we are not a costume. This is our culture,
Yeah, right.
You're going to dress up like, are you going to put on a headdress and everything with buckskins? We don't do that anymore, man. This is our culture.
Actually,
we are people. We're not a costume.
What Res Dogs did, though, was cool. It kind of flipped everything on its ear, right?
Uh-huh.
Because the spirit character is like a lampooning of the people that think they know what an Indian is. You know what I mean? It's perfect. But you're right. We need to quit seeing costumes.
Yeah, I'm just putting it out there. If you want to dress up like some character on TV, go for it.
I'm gonna dress up like TY Pro.
Yeah, it's a purple T.
Yeah, purple.
It's a circle,
just
purple
a C.
T. That's all we see.
With a purple
TY
circle.
Pro, I have a request for you. Could you go into your profile and put some type of image in that circle?
Yeah, I'm going to be you for Halloween.
You're such a big feature on our channel, and some personalization would be great for everybody. I
appreciate his attention to what's going on at the tribe.
Oh, yeah.
Seriously.
Yes. Well, if we have a stream during the day,
to
he's normally here.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. What's the next one? Are there any more details on the expanded surgical services at Council Oak Hospital? Could the public expect to hear more announcements regarding other new services at this facility in the next year?
Yes, you can. That's a good thing about Council Oak and that we're so proud of is that we didn't just buy the building and put up a hospital sign. We're actually adding something almost quarterly, services and everything like that. I think they just added a new, Sean Terry said it today in the cabinet meeting, but they added a new professional, doctor. I can't remember what it's in, but it's something. So we hear something almost seriously every week about what they're adding up there and everything like that.
Well, and I would say
with the surgical thing, though, with the partnership with OU, that sort of knocks out two birds. We want to partner with these med schools and things like that, but also the services that it provides and everything like that right there, it's a win-win.
Yeah, for sure. And we do want to tell the audience that just for clarification, the health system has their own public relations thing that's separate from the executive branch.
Yeah.
So they kind of make that decision of when that's going to come out, so on their end. So
yeah, it'll be coming out though. They do a good job with that.
Sorry. All right. On that note,
yes.
Is there anything on the podcast that we haven't mentioned yet that you think is important to get out the door?
Oh, I think that really just please listen, I mean, because
right.
Because it helps us do things and communicate with our citizenry when they know more about what we deal with and what goes on and everything like that. And it's easier to communicate whenever there's more understanding. And when you understand, like I said, it's hard to jump all over the AG about something when you know where she's coming from or what she's all about or what she deals with on a day-to-day basis, what kind of things hang her up, what kind of oh, they didn't drop the case, the other county that's supposed to give them the case did not do that, and you hear things like that and you're like, oh, okay, well, maybe it wasn't all it was cracked out to be. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard from people that listen that go, oh man, we didn't know that. I didn't know that I didn't know that chief and second chief were like that.
Right.
And I didn't know that chief is still sending emails at 2 a.m. and then he's the first person there before 6 a.m. You know what I mean? There's a guy's working himself to death, but it's
kind of a new field in tribal politics, specifically at our tribe, but really at all tribes, is that the internet age has just kind of accustomed to people to having a lot more access to people in public sphere.
Right.
And the tribe has always been a little bit behind on that front forever because so many people involved, just like we're in the podcast, you're talking to Principal Chief Bill Fife and Ed Mouse about how, they were having discussions with people that they knew one-on-one in the environment that they both they had gone to high school with the guys and everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like you're having to have that same type of discussion or whatever with citizens who are like, you've never even met them. Maybe they're from California or something,
Mm-hmm.
And it's when there's so much pressure on the tribe from all these issues as well, it's crazy. People don't realize the amount of time that the officials spend working out here off the clock.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, some of the issues that people find the biggest issues in the whole tribe, they're not quick fix type of things that you can just make happen.
Yeah, I think that's probably, that's sort of, that's a great point, because, it isn't. There's always some hindrance. And I've talked with you a long time about, when we were first hit with the COVID-19 pandemic.
Right.
It seemed like everything we did, like if you could imagine like a river with all these tributaries, it seemed like everything we did like opened another stream somewhere else. And it was like, oh my gosh, not necessarily like it was. And I told somebody, it's like being in an escape room. Every time we got through a door and figured it out, we were like, yeah. And then we walked forward and there was another door to have to figure out how to
there's
unlock.
a new puzzle.
Yeah. And so it was very much like that. And I think, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, please, understand what we're going through. I just mean that's a great perspective.
Even outside of COVID, though, even if it's not COVID, that's like how the tribal government has to operate all the time anyway, because there's the tribal government is an entity that is inside of a political system oriented. So there's all these forces coming in and putting pressure from the state side, from the federal side, from political groups. Yeah.
Internally.
Within the
put something that they've been asking for years in Tulsa. Why didn't you put it down south? Put it down south. We need this in Tulsa. There's more people in Tulsa. There's nobody down south.
Because there's not basically. Muscogee Media is the only outlet that's doing in-depth coverage of all of that political stuff. There's no CNN or like all the people, so people don't see that there's basically double the amount of churn and things happening in the tribal government than there is in the national federal government, and there's crazy stuff going on in the federal government all the time.
Yeah, all the time.
But I think the podcast is a really interesting thing that everybody should check out. Yeah. Even if you're not like me, if you're a celebrity person, they got that, right? Yeah. If you are somebody who wants to learn about the foundation of the Constitution or the political systems at the tribe so that you can cast your vote, or even if you're just interested about history that's not documented anywhere, you guys got that too.
Yeah, that was part of the motivation, Jared, to be honest with you, is just having something for everybody. And, season 3... it may be, I don't know yet. But, I mean, we're just starting with season 2. But season 3 may be a completely different exploration that may combine the two. But I know that right now with the Storyteller series, natives, we're storytellers. We enjoy stories. We enjoy telling them. And why not tell them about our own history and people and everything? And I see where, there was a comment about talk about Tuckabutchie's allotments, all that stuff. Hey, buddy, this next episode, I promise, is for you. I mean, this is what's coming. So, I mean, I love that I love to see that, because without, unsolicited, just says, hey, how about some of this? And we're like, well, it's already been recorded and it's coming your way. So we're excited.
And we should mention too, at this stage of the game, if there's a citizen that's watching this and they have a suggestion about where the pod can go, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, just email me. Email me. That's literally, we've got another podcast from a citizen gentleman that just reached out to us out of nowhere. He's a fan of the podcast, and he said, I'm a Creek citizen, and I've lost like 675 pounds or something like that. Yeah, or
that's
like
amazing.
Just an absolute like life, like complete transfer of his whole life. Like literally, I mean, and he wants to tell his journey and about how it happened. And he said he wants to motivate other Creeks to, from diabetes and health related issues like that, to get fit or to, lose that amount or whatever. I mean, that's insane amount. But I mean, I was like thinking when I got that email, I was like, that's so cool that this comes from a listener that now can be the subject that not only could be an interesting and probably enthralling story,
Right.
but can do some good at the end of it, which is
Right.
what we're looking for.
Yeah.
You know,
And what's the
end
email?
goal?
What's
the
the
email is jsalzman@muscogenation.com. You can put it on.
Oh yeah, we'll put it in the-
jsalzman@muscogenation.com. Just hit me up if you got an idea or you want to hear something. We'll explore it and look into it. And like I said, we're not the type to see something, especially from a listener that knows what they want to hear, to just get it and whatever. You know, if it can be done, we'll certainly explore it.
Well, and we had some comments here from T.Y. Pearl I wanted to touch on because this is one of my personal issues. So he says, we should exercise our sovereign jurisdiction with the FCC to have a public educational and government public broadcast channel like RSU for the MCN.
Yeah.
We should do that.
We should do
put
that.
Bug in Chief's ear.
Absolutely.
Because I can tell you there are licenses that tribal governments can get for low-powered TV broadcasts and radio broadcasts, and it's just a matter of having somebody apply for them when those windows open.
We always looked into that, man. I remember.
Yeah,
who was the guy that we always talked to?
For a while there, the head of the SEC was a Creek guy. I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but that all of that stuff has changed too. By the way, now they have their processes. You send them. They put you in touch with a person who handles your case.
Okay.
So before it was like you filled all the paperwork out, and you had to submit it in this window, and now the only problem with that is because I tried to set one up with us here, but it's like the tribal government has to do it.
We've got to put the stamp on it.
And then they assign like a rep to you guys, and they're like, here's what you need to do.
How does that work I mean, could the tribal government, but could the tribal government empower you as I mean, I know that you're a statutory independent agency.
Well, my thing would be if the tribe got an FCC either television license or the radio license, and the Cherokees are getting one right now because they were on the list on the FCC's website for their applications getting reviewed. Right. But if we got the license and we had the tower wherever to broadcast, there's a lot of programming airtime you got to fill up. Not all of it. There's plenty of time in the 24 hours to do Muscogee Pods and then do all of the news coverage and all of that type of stuff. Right. So, also, one of the things, and from your experience in the department that we're always talking about is like advertising and all of that type of stuff. And, individual departments of the nation, that's a very prickly legal situation because you got to get everything approved through the AG's office and all that stuff. Whereas if the tribe had its own license and it was broadcasting, right, the finance or the AG's office or whoever could handle all of those advertising things and the money could go back in the tribe. Because we know, and for the audience, if you don't know, I'm going to explain it a little bit. Any revenue that Mvskoke Media generates by selling T-shirts or commercials or whatever, or any department makes, all of that money goes right back into the general fund of the Creek Nation, right? It's not held segregated away from that. It goes right back in there, so it doesn't really matter what departments. Right. And then finance will say, well, you guys had this much money, we're going to hold it maybe in a revolving fund or something like that for you guys to spend next year. So that's how that process works. And if we got an FCC license, there could be a whole department of the nation, or maybe tourism and recreation or something could handle it, that would just sell airtime for commercial airtime on our channel.
Oh, now, it's a dream.
Well, you'd have to make sure that you could do that with the FCC, because I'm sure there's probably limitations that they're going to put on the Indian licenses.
It is definitely a project that really mandates our attention and our motivation to go that direction.
Yeah. And, we were talking about term limits in the podcast. This is one of those things where it's like getting these licenses takes so long.
I know. And you have turnover. And when we talk about the pros and cons, when you talk about leadership and consistency, the Chickasaw Nation is a great model for leadership and consistency. I'm just talking about the fact that you can be, and I don't want to get into all that other stuff.
Jason does my position.
I won't get into all that other stuff. But I will say that just as far as being able to get things done, that's an example of what you're talking about. Right. Because everybody's always on the same page.
The long-term goals could get achieved, that's the trade-off with all of these types of political decisions is, and that's one of the interesting things in the podcast, was I believe it was Chief Fife was saying he was on the council when the term limits got passed.
Yeah.
And, they were passing the term limits because they had gotten into that fist fight type of legal situation with Chief Cox. And Chief Cox had kind of gotten to that point.
Literal fist fight. No.
Well, pretty close. They had gotten into that situation with Chief Cox because the BIA had said Chief Cox is the guy.
Yeah.
And then he had got drunk with power.
Yeah.
Or from their perspective, is what I'm saying.
From what they're saying.
Yeah, well, and they're like, we got to put limits on there.
Yeah.
But now they're like, they've reversed that and said, and my question to them, if I was in that situation, would be like, if it was Chief Cox again, let's say Chief Cox had a time machine, he came back and he's going to get in unlimited term limits. Do you still want term limits then?
Be a respecter of who's in front of you, actually, and
because
what they're
Chief Fife
already
says
do.
in there, I had a personal axe to grind.
Yeah.
And we're going. All this is in the podcast. But anyway,
listen to the podcast.
We could have a long discussion about it after facts. Like you were saying, if you interview 10 citizens,
that's right.
They'll all have a different opinion.
10 different
about
answers.
It.
That's right. You bet.
But with that being said, I don't see any questions in here.
I've really enjoyed it. I appreciate the time,
man. We ought to do it
again.
again.
Yeah, for sure.
I would love to do something with you coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we could field some press conference type stuff. What we could do. And also talk about everything that you guys are doing, because that's one of the things that, our subscribers really ought to be. You guys are subscribers too.
Sure. Yeah, we're all on the same team.
There is stuff that you guys can do that we can't do, that we shouldn't be doing. And then there's stuff that we do that you guys shouldn't be doing. Yeah. And everybody could get the broad.
Exactly.
It's good to have a wide breadth of everything.
When I say we're all on the same team, I just mean that you all are doing are doing an incredible service to the Muscogee Nation. In my capacity, I do a service to the Muscogee Nation. It's all, at the end of the day, it's all for citizens, all for the nation.
The citizens.
So if we can figure out ways to work hand in hand to do that, we're doing our job, first of all, but secondly, we're doing it well. Yeah,
and also in the podcast, that's what was kind of the moral of a lot of the 1979 stuff was, if people can get at a table and have a discussion about it.
Right. Look what we can do.
Yeah, it's way better than cordoning yourself off and taking an ideological standpoint, and then we're just going to go to war. Yep. That doesn't ever solve anything.
That just makes lawyers a lot of money.
Yeah, and they will take the money. They will take the money, but
you don't know anything about lawyers.
Well, you know what was funny? D. Wiperoll earlier did a shout out to Sarosofsky with Judge Moore, who's my dad. Yeah, and so I know a couple of lawyers.
A couple of them. Yeah. Well, man, I had a great time. It's always good to see you. We did this for so many years, and it's why I think somebody commented that we're kind of a dynamic duo. Man, me and this guy go way back, and we've got great chemistry on things like this. So it's a pleasure to be here and help you out on this, and you do a great job. First of all, Livewire is awesome. You got a great setup here, and it's cool. It's conversational. It's much in the same way what we're doing with the pod. So we may have to have you on the pod talking about Livewire.
Sure. Well,
just really your journey. This whole time here, because you've been here now, about north of 10, I know.
Yeah, man, we've been through 14, a lot of administrations and a lot of laws.
A lot of fights, man,
and a lot of citizen outrage and a lot of citizen cheering, the highest highs and the lowest lows. So
the infamous Muskogee Radio episode we both did, right? Ended up in Chief Ellis's office the very next Monday.
Do you want to carve out some time to tell that story, or are we gonna? We'll do it on the pod.
We'll do it on the pod. That's
you want to get that story?
You can't take all my good content.
Go to
the
pod. No. We could sit here and do this for 3, 4, 5, maybe 2 days and continue. Like, you remember that?
Be awesome.
You remember this?
Yeah,
Let's tell that story.
I do remember.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in today, guys. We appreciate all the questions, and I don't have another live wire scheduled for the upcoming weeks, but I'm scheduling stuff. We might have something in the future on that front. If not, enjoy your Halloween holiday. Oh, I know something I can tell you guys about. There are 2 Halloween episodes of the television program from way back that haven't been uploaded to YouTube yet. One of them is about Bigfoot. You remember the Bigfoot episode?
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one is what was the other one? There's another episode.
Well, there was an episode where you were chasing me as a killer. There was a
one's
Bigfoot
on.
episode.
The Bigfoot episode.
There was I was the subject of surgical, medical, mad scientist procedure.
That one's on there. It's the ghost one. Do you remember the ghost?
In the council house.
No.
The
ghost where you got possessed by a ghost and killed Gerald.
Oh my God.
And then at the end,
Good memories.
I don't want to spoil the ending. Yeah. But those 2 episodes are going to be uploaded as their own double feature sometime this week. And I'm going to make a little thing that's kind of like the Crypt Keeper or something.
I'll just say that in Halloween episodes, Native News is right here with The Simpsons. You know what I mean? Like in episodic television history.
Yes.
Simpsons, Native News Today, like razor thin margin when it comes to Halloween episodes. I was
amazed because I was telling somebody, you guys, the Creek Nation published a great Bigfoot thing with the interviews.
Oh, that's cool.
So go to their channel and check that out. But I was telling somebody else, I was like, we did this Bigfoot thing, and I was telling them about it. And then I went to YouTube to try to find the episode, and I was like, that episode hasn't gotten to YouTube?
Whoa.
I was like, the only time it went is when Blood Quantimus Maximus and Creeksecutioner did it on one of our live streams. So I wanted to upload it as just a thing. So
that's good stuff, man.
Go back and check that out.
Well, thanks, brother. Appreciate you, man.
Absolutely. And you guys, we'll see you in the future. Look forward to the Halloween video, and we'll talk to you guys later. Mado.
Have a good day.